Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Before watching this video, make sure to watch the first part of Tom Sardy's schizophrenia story, which you can find somewhere around here. With that being said, welcome to my channel and enjoy the video. Tom's introverted personality, his tendency to philosophical and creative thinking, his sadness that he felt deep inside of him, could have been a sign that he just entered the first phase of schizophrenia, the prodromal phase.
But what are you trying to say, Fatty? Does everyone who's introverted and has a rich imagination needs to worry about developing schizophrenia? That's like 90% of Japan's population.
No, but mixed with the fact that he has a history of psychosis in his family, plus his recent tendency to socially isolate himself, he probably should have consulted a doctor by then. And if some real-life precautions were taken, maybe he could have prevented his illness to proceed to the next phase, the active phase. The first shift in Tom's behavior, the first switch that got turned on, was when he dropped out of college and pursued day trading, which was slowly gaining popularity around then.
Okay, that's an irrational life decision, but he's 20 years old, for God's sake. We all did stupid shit in our 20s. What's wrong with that?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll let his sister tell you.
I had a phone call with him in which it really sounded like he was describing things happening that were hallucinations. And the way he talked about them, he didn't seem to have any awareness that they were hallucinations. And those two things together were very much like my mother.
Having witnessed schizophrenia before, Marin quickly realized what was going on. And with every phone call, Tom seemed a little more disoriented, disorganized, like he's slowly detaching from reality. He even described once hearing voices. He just entered a psychotic episode, and it affected every aspect of his life, the financial aspect being a major one of them. Making irrational decisions, Tom slowly ran out of money, lost his apartment, became completely socially isolated, and eventually got into problems with the law. And in this, what we call the active phase, it's not really uncommon for schizophrenia patients to feel disorganized, as disorganized speech and disorganized behavior add to 3 other symptoms to form the 5 criteria required to establish the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Tom had to be taken to his home city to get persecuted. Fortunately, Anchorage had a mental health court that looked specifically into his case, and instead of giving him jail time, Tom received a year of mandatory medical treatment. And it probably was an antipsychotic treatment. I mean something like clozapine, risperidone, or even alloperidol. The last one being the strongest one of them in terms of reducing the positive symptoms of schizophrenia like hallucinations and delusions. These 3 drugs actually work by reducing the dopamine and serotonin in the brain. The drug was effective in getting Tom to go back on track with his life. In that year, he even got a job at REI, at first as a stalker and then as a cash register. He was doing good, but the good days didn't last for long, as they always do. As the mandatory year of treatment came to an end, Tom decided to discontinue taking the drug, which resulted in, guess what? The redeterioration of his condition. That's expected. His friends, family, and even his psychiatrist tried so hard to convince him to keep taking the drugs, but only were met with rejection. His friend Zach even said once, "Just take them, what do you have to lose?" To which Tom responded, "When I take them, I feel embarrassed." He was embarrassed by his diagnosis, and by taking the drugs, he sort of confirmed it in his mind. And that's an idea Tom wasn't ready to accept yet. It probably was the worst decision Tom could have ever made in his life. The voices came back, and they came back stronger than ever, telling him this time that everyone hates him, that people were looking for him, to kill him, to do bad things to him. Something in his mind distorted his reality so much to the point where he didn't trust anyone really. It was the word against Tom in his imagination. And this is not at all uncommon really, as 75% of all schizophrenia patients do experience some kind of hallucinations at one point, auditory hallucinations being the most frequent type. But it can also occur in different forms like visual, gustatory, olfactory, tactile, basically touching all the senses in your body. And as disorganized their thoughts as they already are, these patients feel ashamed expressing themselves. Imagine yourself sitting in a room, in a public space, in a waiting room in a doctor's office, for example, and you start to see an object that looks pretty much like a shadow of a 3 meters human being in the corner. And you could clearly notice you're the only one in the room seeing it, as basically you're the only one reacting to it. But it doesn't matter anyway. It doesn't stop you from being scared of it. It doesn't stop you from being influenced by it. And maybe you'd react. The first time, maybe you jump, scream. But as such experiences become more frequent, you'll finally understand that there's something wrong with your perception, and you'd feel discriminated against, ashamed to display any form of emotion at that moment, which by itself would make you even more socially isolated. It's a cycle, you see? Back to the story. In the remaining years of his life, Tom, as everyone knew him, slowly faded away, and whatever left in him lived in the streets of Anchorage. He became homeless. Sometimes you'd find him wandering in the streets, and sometimes you'd find him living in the woods camping by himself. His sister Marin tried to regularly visit him, and as hard as it is to communicate with Tom at that point, she tried to offer help, giving him clothes, money, and food, which he accepted initially, until one day, when she was visiting him in the woods, she felt an immensely aggressive aura, as he looked at her with the dead eyes that he had, deprived of compassion, concern, of any human emotions really, and asked her if she remembered the day she planned to kill him. Knowing that her brother is drowning in deep psychosis, Marin quickly understood that her words needed to be well calculated. After a couple of seconds of horrifying silence, she anxiously responded, "No, Tom, I don't remember that. That didn't happen at all, Tom." It was there and then Marin realized that her brother is long gone. His former self tried for so hard and for so long to fight psychosis, but with every year, Tom, the little brother she knew, slowly disappeared and took his place this old man, deprived of human emotions. His brain was working at the speed of light, constantly thinking about conspiracies, possibilities, and his soul was controlled by the voices he heard. But that doesn't mean that Tom didn't exist. He will always remain in her memories as the loving brother she once had. Tom ended his life in February 2014 in API, Anchorage Psychiatric Institute. As I was writing the script to this video, I felt a sense of helplessness, powerlessness. The things this young man lived, these horrible experiences, could have happened to any of us really, and there is little to nothing we could have ever done about it. And if every one of Tom's family ever stumbled into this video one day, I want you to know that your son wasn't alone. We are all together in this. Reading and getting to know his story in the process of making this video made me realize really that it's because of people like Tom, we as human species are fighters. We never give up, and we'll constantly keep evolving and adapting. If you guys enjoyed this video, wait till you see the next one.
おい去年はよくもやってくれたな。